Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to Musical Talk. This is Thos Ribbits, and as you can probably hear from the music in the background, we must be in Edinburgh for the Fringe Festival 2009, and that's exactly right. We're here to bring you the pick of some of the best new and some of the best old musicals here in Edinburgh. There's so much going on. It's the largest theatre and comedy festival in the world, and even if you were just to concentrate as I have on musical theatre, there's still far too much to see and hear. So, what we've decided to do over the next few weeks is bring you a selection of some of just the choice that we've seen. Now, I'm up here in Edinburgh along with Tim Saward, and we've seen a selection of shows, and we thought, bearing in mind there's so many here to see that you can't possibly get through every one of them, we've decided to give you just a pick over the next few weeks here on Musical Talk.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's Musical Talk at the Edinburgh Fringe. That's right, so in this and the next programme what you're going to hear are me, that's Thos Ribbits, and Tim Saward, giving you some interviews with creators, composers, actors, actresses who are involved in some of the musical theatre up here in Edinburgh. And you have to remember that every year the Fringe Festival is responsible for initiating or encouraging a whole raft of new musicals, as well as seeing revivals of old ones, and we'll be talking to the people behind them. But on top of that, you'll be getting our new Twitter review process. Yes, that's right, I'm sure you'll be aware that Musical Talk has now got a Twitter feed, and during our time up there and just afterwards, Tim Saward and myself reviewed some of the shows in Twitter style, both on that feed, and you can read it there on our website, and here in these episodes, as we do 2-minute Twitter reviews. And in between these reviews and these interviews, you'll be hearing just some of the sounds that we experienced up here in Edinburgh, just little clips of what it's like to walk down the Royal Mile and have people thrust flyers into your hands about new shows, about hearing the cabaret at George Square. You'll hear about some of the things that have been going on. It's a huge theatrical creative community made up of both people in the profession and people who want to go and see shows. It's marvellous. We made lots of friends. We saw lots of people we already know. We hope that you'll get just a small sense of the huge fun that is the Edinburgh Festival. But just to be contrary, we start today with two shows which actually aren't musicals in their own right. One is a musical play about the life of Charles Darwin called Origin of the Species. It's actually a much longer title than that, and John Hinton, the man behind it, will be talking about that soon, and we'll be hearing songs from that show. But before that, let's just hear a few words from Peter Duncan, the former Blue Peter presenter, an actor and director of many musical theatre and pantomime productions in the last 20 to 30 years. And he'll be talking about his one-man show, Peter Duncan, Daft and Dangerous, also starring Brian Cant and Andy Hamilton as God and the Devil. And it's a showcase of his many talents, and he sings many of the songs that he's sung in his long career in musical theatre. It's Musical Talk at the Edinburgh Fringe. But I'm very honoured, if I may say, Peter, to be meeting you because, well, this probably doesn't sound so good to you, but for me, you're a huge hero.
That's very
There's
sweet.
somebody I followed since I was a young man, which regrettably I'm not anymore, but I've carried on following you, and I've caught you here in Edinburgh, where you've got a great show, which is called Daft and Dangerous, or possibly Damp and Dangerous today.
Yes, it is a bit damp, isn't it? Yeah.
Just tell us a bit about the show. What can we expect?
Well, the show really is. It's difficult. Is it confessional? Is it retrospective? Is it completely cranky? I mean, it doesn't fit neatly into any category. I mean, because it was Edinburgh, I kind of thought, well, I'll try and create some kind of narrative, because I've called it a theatre piece. I didn't want to call it musical theatre because that puts, unfortunately, some people off for this kind of crowd. And I wasn't bold enough to call it stand-up, so I've called it a theatre piece, really. And actually the title, I mean, it might just be the two of us here, but there's my eldest daughter sitting opposite sewing my Charlie Chaplin costume. She came up with the title, so we really worked on the idea of whether we should call it Duncan Dead or Blue Peter Gnome or something. But Daft and Dangerous kind of summed up the heart of it, really. Because in essence, I start off being chased by a truck. I die. Andy Hamilton and Brian can't come back as God and the Devil. Decided to give me an hour to prove myself, and then I spend an hour showing off. Doing some Blue Peter stuff, pantomime stuff, and a lot of good musical theatre stuff, I hope. And at the end, I get judged by the audience whether I should go to heaven or hell. And
what's been the general consensus?
We've done 9 shows. It's 5-4 to heaven.
It's a bit of a tightrope, if you don't mind me saying.
Yes. That splash of water was from the canopy we're just inside of, so we didn't get wet.
No, I'm very excited when I see you. That's the problem, I'm afraid. And how's it been going? Because how did you devise what to put in? Because your career is hugely extensive, so it can only be a sort of little sort of potpourri, a sort of selection box, really.
It is really. I think I put the favourite bits in. I did do a tryout last year, and I did a couple of hours, and there was obviously a lot more material. And the hardest thing is that you've got a solid song to sing or a solid idea. It's often the links in all things that have some kind of narrative. The hardest thing is to work out how to go from one thing to another in a seemingly effortless way, really. And of course there's bits of audience participation as well, which gives it the edge, which is unpredictable. So I know everybody comes up to Edinburgh, works out their routine, but I suppose if you've got a bit of history, you kind of enjoy being a bit fearless about it and just seeing where it will go. But at the same time I think people always think, they forget that performance comes in 2 kinds of places, really, where you have a very definite, clear, particularly musical theatre, it's very accurate. Obviously your melody, there's timing, there's pitch, and although a song can live slightly differently with a different audience, it has to be accurate. It's not like standing there doing stand-up where you can amble through something. But then the links...
song, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, no, you can't do that. But then the links can be a bit more ambled. But then sometimes impro, that you think's impro, is not impro at all. It's pretend impro. So, it's a complex business.
I think the show really flags... as I've said, it shows so many aspects of your career, of which pantomime is a very clear part. And I love pantomime, British pantomime, that is. I think it's such an important part of British theatrical culture and slightly sneered on for some reason in certain circles.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, really. And I love it partly because it formed most of my childhood, because that's what my mum and dad did. They used to put on pantos and old-time musical shows in the summer. So I grew up, surrounded... Well, literally, as I say in the show, I grew up in a wardrobe, really, surrounded by props and costumes and the sort of all that strange world of panto performers, sort of men dressed as women dressed as men...
Got that hobby, haven't you?
Exactly. So it was a strange but very open, liberal world, which you can imagine in the sort of late 50s and early 60s was it's not such a liberal world now. So, but I was, it was a very open-hearted life of people trying to make a living from being singers, actors, dancers, performers. And
well, your father, you say in the show that your father was one of the great last beat performers, if you like.
He was. He put what they call an alfresco show, or a fit-up, on Redcar Sands, end of the 40s, which, and Redcar, because it's got these huge hands, had a big history going back 150 years, but he was the last guy to put a show on called The Wavelets. Alan Gale's The Wavelets, it was called, if anybody remembers those days. And literally you'd build a bit like here in Edinburgh. Some of them, they're just sort of wooden structures.
Things, aren't they, really?
Yeah, but on a nice day, people would sit in a deck chair and you'd go round and you put sixpence into a bottling it was called, and then you could while away the afternoon watching the show.
And that's a huge British tradition, completely gone now, which has actually created so many people. Max Miller started in those, Tommy Hanley started in that as well.
Yeah.
Names may not be so well known today, sadly, but really significant parts of 20th century culture.
Well, I tried in the show. I do a skit on Charlie Chaplin, really, and I suppose I try to allude to the idea that so much of what exists now always comes from the past. So when you think of like Chaplin and Stan Laurel, who before there was TV and certainly almost before there was films, all that existed was going to see people in a theatre. So all the skill of comedy and all the skill of knowing where an audience is looking by all the business on a stage. These guys learnt their trade, and they took it. Then, when the movie started, they took it into film. So
it's that Carno group, essentially.
Yeah. And that was the beginnings of almost anything that is certainly kind of humorous and populist. The variety world and vaudeville in America was the king of everything. And in a sense, Edinburgh has a feel of that's come back a bit, really. But I think people just don't remember who were the first kind of guys to do it, really.
And who solidified what we now accept. Because I think you're right. They took the slapstick, the stage stuff, solidified it into film in character, of course. But, but so much of that trade was carried over from the stage, from the musical.
Yeah.
And that's been assimilated and homage, shall we say, up to where we are today.
It has.
It looks like it's changed, but it's still essentially the core, straight back to the Victorian musical, which is fascinating.
I really think it is, and I think a lot of that physical energy and that sort of strength, the fitness of a performer really does count as well. I mean, it certainly counts in musical theatre. It's akin to sort of being a performing athlete. I mean, you have to be so fit to do it, in the terms of just recovery, so you can, do something very physical and then be able to sort of knock out a ballad 30 seconds later. Your recovery has to be quick.
And how can people see Daft and Dangerous?
Well, it's on at the Pleasance Courtyard, 6:30 every night in the Beyond. You can obviously book online at Ed Fringe, or you can queue up and get tickets. We've got 2 for 1 for the next 7 days because it's a big auditorium, so there's 300 seats to sell, so I'm looking for a happy 3-generational audience that enjoy all the stuff we've talked about, really.
And it's a good show, so I do recommend.
Oh, you've seen it, of course.
I loved it. Yeah, it was fantastic. I think the fact that you immediately start by hoisting a dummy of yourself in your green and white checkered suit from Blue Peter, isn't it?
Yes, well, that's to take the eye so I can get on. Oh, God.
Everyone's a critic. Peter, it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you so much. I hope that you sell out for every remaining show here in Edinburgh. It's great. So
thank you very much. It's been nice to talk to you too.
Musical talk.
My name's John Hinton, and I'm doing a show at this year's Edinburgh Fringe Festival called The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Survival of Evolutionary Theories in the Face of Scientific and Ecclesiastical Objections, being a musical comedy about Charles Darwin, 1809 to 1882.
Unfortunately, you don't have to actually say that during the course of the show, otherwise you would actually have much less time to develop the story.
Exactly. It was the show was originally called The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Survival of Favoured Races in the Struggle for Life, which is, of course, the name of Charles Darwin's book.
Well, you snapped it up.
Exactly. That was considered a bit too long-winded.
Too blasé. Yeah. Now, tell me, it's a great show. It's immediately, I'd say it was a romp, but with a really sophisticated underscore, if you like. There's a lot more to it than it first meets the eye. So how did you come up? It's your creation. How did you come up with it?
I wrote it. Well, I had an idea of writing a play about Charles Darwin about 6 years ago, say, and shelved it. Then it was coming round to the big Darwin year, obviously. So I found that out, luckily, a year in advance of the actual year.
Preparation time.
Exactly. So I had time then to settle down and get it written. So I wrote it over the course of 3 months in Australia. Actually, I was in Australia for 3 months, and set myself that task for that time. And it became a musical quite late on in the process, actually. It was a play, was the idea. I write songs as well. I have a band. I write comedy music for the band. And I was struggling with some of the aspects of the play, like how to get across the theory, because I was really keen. The original idea with the play was to make a piece of theatre based on non-fiction, based on the actual book, the non-fiction book that Charles Darwin wrote.
Quite a tall order.
Yes, well, exactly. That was the idea anyway. So I mean, it became more than that. It became a story about his life and his travels and so on. But I was very keen to get the theory across and in some way do a chapter by chapter account of what's in the book. So my first attempts with writing that scene, basically, of explaining the theory, turned out with quite dull lecture formats, And I suddenly had this brainwave when I was on a walk in the Blue Mountains in Australia. If in doubt, do it as a song. So that became the first song, the song that explains the book chapter by chapter. And then, of course, from there, it was already a musical, so I might as well write lots of other songs on all other parts of his life as well. So that's how it came to be the way it is.
Now, when you were originally envisaging it as a play, because it's very funny, was your original play to be funny as well, or is that come with a musical?
Personally, I find it quite difficult to write anything that's not funny. I think it's automatically going to become that just because of the type of stuff I like to see myself, and I just can't refrain from making it quite whimsical. there's something else interesting, which is that Darwin's life was a lot more difficult and depressing than might come across in the play. He had this horrible illness through his whole life, and in the original draft of the play, he was ill throughout, but that's quite difficult to portray on stage. So I decided...
And vomit's such an off-putting thing.
Yeah, it is
First
not
row
nice
get very
to see
nervous,
on
yeah.
stage. Yes, absolutely. So I decided to cut the illness basically, and concentrate on the comic aspects of it. And
Well, can I pay you the compliment of saying you are engaging from the very first, in fact, before the show starts, because you're waiting for us as we come in your study.
yes,
Left-handedly writing, I notice, with your quill.
well, I can't really write any other way myself. So,
But you greet people and you keep people entertained until the last member of the audience is
yes, absolutely. I mean, the setup of the show is that the audience have been invited round to Charles Darwin's study to watch him work. So they're very much there in the room. There's no question of a fourth wall.
No, quite.
And there are moments in the show when that non-existent fourth wall is breached even further. Let's say
The audience become part of the work with you, don't they?
exactly. They help to demonstrate the theories and practices and so on.
Persuading members of the audience to mime mating, I always think, goes down a long way as well, particularly for other members of the audience.
They tend to like that. Yes.
Have you had different mimes so far for that?
There has been a vast variety, yes, which is always jolly interesting to see what's going to come up.
But your personal enthusiasm comes across from the beginning as well. I mean, you're portraying a man who had passion for what he did,
yes,
with passion of your own.
Yes,
I mean, it sounds really flannelly and sort of almost wet, but you come across really charismatically. You know, it's a one-man show.
Yeah.
You run the whole thing, but actually, people can't take their eyes off of you, and you can work a room with just a smile.
Right. Okay. Good. That's nice.
There was a lot of that. You were responding from the audience in return, I thought.
Yes. Sure. Well, that's great. I think that's. I think that's one of the things that's attracted me to the theatre in the first place is this immediacy. You know, you're actually there in the room with the person, and you know, if the corner of the performer's mouth curls up, you know, you're there and it's happening live. I certainly care about the subject. I mean, it's a comedy, but I'm in no way am I poking fun at Charles Darwin. You know, if anything, he in the play pokes fun at all the other people in his life. But I certainly revere him, and I revere his theory. And I'd only do it if I thought it was quite important to get across what.
It's an affectionate piece, yes, and it's also educational as well. That's but in that sort of completely sweetened way that no one feels like they're being taught anything in a difficult literary way, as you say.
Yes, I think one of the techniques that allows that is that those bits are done through song, which makes them a lot more easily digestible, hopefully.
Now, you mentioned you've got a band. Now, what's the band called?
Spalian Acecraft.
Of course, it would be.
Yes.
And obviously, presumably, the skills you picked up there helped you very much in this. I mean, forgive me, what's your background? How did you get to this point today?
Well, I've got a background in physical theatre. I studied at the Jacques Lecoq School in Paris, mime and clown and mask and so on.
You spend a lot of time scurrying on the floor. You're very physical.
Do I scurry on the floor? There is a bit of scurrying on the floor. Yeah. I'd accept that. Yes, certainly. So I mean, it's not a physical theatre piece, but physical theatre is it's a training as well as a style, let's say. So it can be brought to anything.
You can infuse it into almost any.
Absolutely. And I do fast character changes and so on, and that all comes from my training in physical theatre. I mean, I've done musicals as well. But that's not really my point of interest. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't strictly call this show a musical. It's a comic theatre piece with songs. Yes. So you know, I certainly do have that in my background as well. But yeah, it's mainly physical theatre, mime, clowning, things like that, and the pop music. Yes. As well, on the other side.
And you say you write comic songs with your group?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously
yes,
that's
right.
infused into what we've had today. So how long? How long have you been doing that?
The band's been going for about 6 or 7 years or so.
Oh, right, okay.
With breaks. There was a 2-year break when I went off to do my course in Paris, for example. But,
so how easy do you find composing? Is music something that comes easy to you, or is it?
Songs are short, and that makes them easier than plays to write.
Well, yeah, comparatively, very much shorter.
I mean, for many years since university, I wrote some things at university, some plays. I finished university 9 years ago. Since then, although I've been trying to write plays, all I've actually got round to starting to write and finishing are songs until now, and I've actually seen a project through to its conclusion, which is great.
You've seen it evolve, in fact.
Yeah, well, you could say that. Yeah.
But just touching on the songs, I had to say they were funny all the way through. I mean, you introduced them nicely. There's that lovely sort of segue from the biographical story immediately. The room is set like a Victorian
Yes.
study. There's a globe and there's a table.
Apart from, there's an acoustic guitar in the room with me. Yes.
And you talk about when you were at Shrewsbury School.
Yes, Shrewsbury School. Yes.
The Darwin went to, and then you say and what the subjects that you taught there.
Yes, so I'm taught Latin grammar and acoustic guitar.
And of course, you get a huge roar from that. I mean, you
Yes.
pick up the guitar and move straight into the first
Yes,
song.
because everyone's been looking at the guitar
Yeah.
already, going,
Aye.
there's something out of place here. Yeah.
Now, writing the songs themselves, now you said obviously it came from the, if you like, a potted version of his book.
Yeah.
And you reprise the song as well later on for the later chapters, don't you?
Exactly. It goes through all the 15 chapters in the book, yes, absolutely.
And you take
Three
great
chapters.
play and some splendidly provocative lyrics, if I may say, or interesting scanning envelope pushing, shall we say.
Oh, okay. Oh, is that what it's called? Is that the official term for it? Yes. Yeah. I like to cram too many syllables into one line, that's for sure. And rhyme with the most difficult words I possibly can, yes, absolutely. Reciprocal dimorphic hybridism I managed to rhyme with.
Well, in its own right, I mean, just saying that in a play would be relatively impressive, but to be able to musicalise that.
Yes.
But the songs are actually, I do like the songs. They're very funny, and obviously, as you say, your pop interests are, they're catchy as well. They're very much the modern idiom. We're not getting
Right.
Gilbert and Sullivan. We're getting a contemporary stand-up comic song.
Yeah. Okay.
Infused with a genuinely sincere piece about sincere piece about child's art history. It's quite an interesting fusion. I mean, did you worry that was going to be difficult?
Well, there was a lot of discussion with my director Daniel Goldman about how to introduce the music. What the segue is into it, and that's the solution we came up with. That I would just blurt out that I learnt it at school, obviously.
Well, I was going to say, what's your favourite song? I mean, it's a silly thing to say because they're all your babies, but...
of my own? Of the show?
From this show in particular.
I think it's got to be the first one I wrote, which is the one that goes through the chapters because I'd say that's the linchpin of it. There are ones that are funnier. There's the one about him marrying his cousin, for example. The most recent song to be added was the one about his youth, the first song in the show about barnacles, about him only being interested in barnacles for his entire childhood when his father wanted him to learn to be a vicar.
Well, in fact, there's mention about the change profession anyway, which is actually part of his life, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
I actually thought that opening song really set it up very nicely, because you also managed to set up the family relationships, which are actually so important throughout. Those influences who have... the characters who have influenced him, but not necessarily in a way that they wanted, by his reaction against them.
Of course. That
was set up very nicely early on.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting general biographical point that everyone influences you whether in the way they intend or not. Absolutely, that's very true.
I have to ask this bit's not on the recording. I bought the album because I wanted to hear it again. Do you have any objection to us playing one of the songs, either complete or in part?
That's fine. No, of course.
If you're happy with that, thank you. It would be very nice to illustrate your work.
Yeah, that's great.
And now, what's going to happen with this show? Obviously, you're playing every day. People in Edinburgh, how can people here at the Fringe see it?
Excellent.
Yes, it's a question everybody's asking.
Yes, it is. Well, we're playing at the Pleasance Courtyard every day apart from Tuesdays at midday in Pleasance Beside. And I should probably tell you that it's sold out the last two performances now.
Have it already?
Yes, exactly. Today and yesterday sold out. So
bearing in mind today is the first Sunday of the festival.
Yeah.
It's been pouring with rain.
Yes.
And you're on at 12:15, which isn't necessarily the most auspicious.
Absolutely.
I can't even say it's the most auspicious of slots. You sold out. It was fantastic.
Yes,
I was
absolutely.
amazed when everybody came in and you were actually trying to make spaces for people.
And even before any reviews have come out as well, which means that there's talk, which is brilliant. You know, people are talking about it. So
I'm very happy to be part of that. I have to say, I thought it was fantastic. On a personal level, I give you 5 stars.
Thank you very much.
And I describe it absolutely as a romp with a sophisticated foundation.
Great.
I hope that's useful to you.
Yes, thank you.
Genuinely, that was a great show.
Thank you
you very much indeed. And where does it go after here? Does it go anywhere after here?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to be spending the rest of the year in Sweden doing another play. But hopefully there's a couple of weeks gap in that. We're hoping to do a tour, either a tour or a run in London for 2 weeks later on this year.
Splendid.
And then next year, who knows, you know,
See
take it as far as it comes. And obviously at some point there'll be a sequel about another eminent somebody through history.
Charles Dickens, you'll get muddled with the names, I'm sure.
Okay, well, maybe I should tell you that the idea is Pythagoras.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's
Right.
the
Well,
current idea.
That's a new angle.
Yeah.
Hey. Sorry. Do you know where it's going to be in London, or is that...
No, not yet. We did 2 previews before the festival at the Old Red Lion in
yeah.
Angel. So that's a link we have, obviously. That's a possibility, but we're looking into that, you know. The show itself has a website, which is www.originofspecies.info.
You've crammed it down for this.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think there's a maximum length of websites you're allowed. But there isn't a maximum length of show titles, luckily.
And so people can go in that and find out what's going on and see if it presumably goes any further.
Exactly,
as well.
or any future shows will be on there as well, and the lyrics to the songs are on there as well.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Good luck for the rest of the run. I hope you sell out every time, and you deserve to.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. That's great.
A 5-star show.
The origin of species by means of natural selection, or the survival of favoured races in the struggle for life. In Chapter 1, I look at cultivated plants and pets. I note that a species differs more the more advanced it gets. But what is it makes each species' specialization so complex? Well, it's all due to the fact that characteristics are inherited from one generation to the next. I ask in Chapter 2, can this be true of breeds in nature? And I conclude that it's no more than a question of nomenclature. The words breed, species, genus are merely constructs we've imposed, when in actual fact the situation resembles more of a smooth gradation ongoing and unopposed. Are you all with me so far? Good, I'll speed up. In Chapter 3, I look specifically at the struggle for survival, the way that every living thing must always battle with its rival, and all the worst adapted will expire without excuse, and meanwhile all the strongest, luckiest, healthiest, pluckiest individuals will survive and reproduce. I'm thinking of giving a name to that particular part of my theory, something snappy, something like survival of the toughest. No. Survival of those most likely to survive. No, that's a repetitive tautology. And so was that. Survival of the fittest. Chapter 4 is really the core. I've called it Natural Selection, and it describes the way that nature puts my theory into action. The species diverge rather like the branches of a tree. The branch that grows will then divide the ones that don't fall by the side, and every branch is different to a greater or lesser degree.
And here's a Musical Talk Twitter review.
We also saw Facebook, the musical, at C venues. My tweet for that was, valiant performers unable to rescue shambolic, boring book and over-balladized score, 1 star.
But its critics are less kind, I believe. I thought Facebook was a disaster from beginning to end. I didn't engage with it. When I was either bored for the most part, and on those occasions when I wasn't bored, I was angry.
It pulled me along for the first 10 minutes by the sort of interesting idea that they communicated the story through status updates, and unfortunately it just turned out not to be really about Facebook in any significant way. It was just a story that happened to use Facebook as a quite important plot element.
Musical Talk.
My name's Leon Parris, and on Wolf Boy I've written the music and the lyrics. and we adapted it from a play by an American writer called Brad Fraser. Canadian writer called Brad Fraser, who lives in San Francisco. After I wrote the music for The Stig of the Dump at the Tabard in London, the director, Russell Laby, asked me if I'd be interested in doing a full-blown musical with him. And he mentioned this play that he'd read back in the day that he'd always wanted to adapt. So he sent me the script, and I read it and immediately thought I'd never seen anything quite like it. Didn't honestly initially see why it was a musical theatre piece, but then after having reread it and sort of stripping away what was superfluous to it, found this kind of tragic love story, which seemed like a very obvious backbone to a piece of musical theatre. But obviously it's very, very dark, so it wasn't instantly something that I thought, yes, that'll be fun to write songs to. And and then we opened that in London.
And when was that?
We opened at the Tabard. We did 4 previews at the Tabard Theatre in Chiswick in June.
This year?
Yes.
Oh, right.
At the end of June, beginning of July. And the piece was actually written incredibly quickly. The whole thing was put together in about 3 or 4 weeks, I think, in total. And we previewed it at the Tabard just to start testing it out and cutting things and rewriting. And then that gave us a nice hiatus in which to be able to rewrite things. And obviously, living in Barcelona, it's a bit of a commute back to the recording studio. And then we opened in Edinburgh on the 6th.
And you're here for the rest of the month, aren't you?
The show is here until the 31st, yes, other than Tuesdays, I believe.
Yes. You've got to give people a day off occasionally.
Apparently so,
yes.
Down, yeah.
Now, just for our listeners, could you give us just a very brief précis of what it's about? Because you're right, it's quite dark.
It is very, very dark. It is a tragic psychosexual thriller. It's about a very unlikely...
They're very rarely happy, though.
Yes, very rarely happy. Yeah. It's not laugh-a-minute stuff, but it's about a very unlikely bond that springs up between 2 boys in sort of a boys' home / hospital, between a boy who's recently tried to kill himself and a second one who may or may not possess the powers of a wolf. And it's about them finding friendship in the least likely of places and perhaps helping each other to confront the dark recesses of their past and skeletons in their closets.
They shed light on their inner darkness.
They do indeed, yes, in song.
Yes. Well, as one does in real life.
As one does in real life.
Now, I had the privilege of seeing this last Saturday.
Oh, right.
And I very much enjoyed it, but you're quite right, it takes you down, it brings you, the narrative is very strong, first of all. Now, as you say, it was an established play.
Yes.
How did you set about adapting it? I was interested that you said it took such little time as well.
It did take next to no time. The original play script is it has quite an odd structure to it, whereby until quite a long way into it, you're not entirely sure where you are. It keeps you on the back foot for quite a long time. And obviously, in a 1-hour musical, you can't really do that too much because people will switch off. So in adapting it, the first thing that we did was simply try to nail down what the definite spine of the story was, and that had to just simply become a story of these 2 boys. So in some ways, I kind of looked at it as a relationship, and it beginning with slightly awkward flirtation and something slightly passive-aggressive coming out of that. And
I was going to say, I wouldn't have started with flirtation when I saw it. The first thing I get into is, without ruining too much, is a little bit of a torture scene.
It is a bit of a torture scene, yes.
You know, I'm not very well.
We've toned it down quite a lot.
I don't talk to people on first meetings.
No, it's strange in that respect, and I wasn't. I never thought, when I was first looking at it, I decided that it wasn't. There's no possible way I could approach it in the way that I would normally approach writing things. So basically, I looked at the play script. Russell had done a sort of 30-page breakdown of how he would adapt the play, and a few ideas of roughly where we thought songs might come. And then all I did was kind of oddly said, right, if this is ever going to work, I'm going to write it. I'm going to write the music as if it's a really, really gritty black and white film. And I'm just going to write the film score to that, and then I'll improvise the lyrics over the top of that, so that hopefully it doesn't come out of left field at you too much when they start singing. Because I think as soon as you go, oh, he's singing, we've lost all credibility, just simply because of the tone of the piece.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because one of the things... It's funny you should mention sort of film noir and black and white, because the first feeling I got when I went in was this is set in the 1940s. In fact, I was never quite able to get a grasp on when it was set.
On when it was set.
Or even, actually, where it was set, because there's a few Americanisms... I'll say that again. There's a few Americanisms in it, like mailman and the cinema as a theatre.
That's right.
But of course, forgive me, the performances are very much in the British idiom.
They are.
And,
yes.
and I think the better for it. It wasn't that fake American singing that you so often hear.
No, it's not.
But what it did, it took it into a kind of nowhere quite place.
Yes.
So in my head, I made it the 1940s, but
into
possibly
the 1940s.
somewhere in Northern England.
Yeah, absolutely. It's straight. We've been sort of very, very slowly stripping the Americanisms out of it as much as we possibly can. Although, because it's the kind of thing which you don't want to be able to place, because it is so claustrophobic and so contained and so segmented in as much as you have two beds on a stage and it takes the first 10 minutes to work out whether they're in one room, two rooms, and so on and so forth. And rather strange but very, very clever blocking-wise decision from Russell was to try and delineate the corridors and where things are. So once we get that out of the way after the first few minutes, at that point I quite like it that a lot of people have actually said, when is it set? And I go, well, whenever. It really doesn't matter. It's set last night. Or, like you say, in 1940s. I think the design definitely dates it to a certain extent.
The beds.
Because it's so kind of...
Beds,
exactly. It's because it's very grotty and very, very dirty. But I think that kind of adds to... Well, God willing, it just adds to the feeling of how uncomfortable we can make an audience in any given time.
Well, it's very strange because it took a few minutes for me to fully engage with it, I don't mind
Sure.
saying. Partly, I think, because I was trying to explore what I thought it was, because it doesn't present you with an easy pat answer straight off.
No,
which
it doesn't.
Is clearly what you're planning. But what I discovered was it surreptitiously creeps up on you, engages you, and then you're with it right through to the bitter end, and I use those words advisedly.
Yes.
So I think you've been very successful in that. I also, something else you just said a few minutes ago about losing the sincerity or the people's belief in it when people start singing.
Sure.
What I like is actually the technique. I think you've been very accomplished in the sense
Yes.
that people move from conversation into song in a conversational style, and it's almost seamless. There are certain places when I suddenly realise, oh, we're in a song.
Yes. Well, a lot of that is I owe the credit to the cast on a lot of that, just simply because it's a deceptively impossible thing to do, and it's very, especially when you're working with a backing track and so on and so forth, which obviously we have to do because a lot of the music is made rather surreally by me breathing into things and making noises in my studio and then messing around with it.
When you say breathing, you don't mean a trumpet. You're talking about...
No, I mean how to sort of go growling in the background and things like this. And
it's ether music in a way. Isn't
it is very much so. And the guy is very, very difficult, especially with the soundtrack, to not press play and for the audience to immediately go, oh, now's the beginning of a song. But the cast were from day one kind of phenomenal at segueing in and out of things without you realising. And because they are primarily very, very strong actors who happen to be able to sing, and I think that was kind of a casting decision we were aiming for from the outset, other than when it comes to Lee Latchford-Evans' character, who is predominantly a nearly sung-through role. There's not very much dialogue on his side of things. But no, I mean, I've done a complete sort of 180 on what they're capable of, because I sort of saw them in the auditions, wrote the stuff, came back and thought I just really didn't have a frame of context as to whether it was going to work the way we needed it to. And that's just what comes from brilliant acting and very clever casting, I think.
I think you undersell yourself, though, because the characters sing with the same voice that they speak in.
That's right, yes, they do.
So, there's no jolt. Occasionally you see musicals where they seem to adopt a different character or they become perkier during
Yes,
song
absolutely.
Like that. None of that. It's all... there's a through line. And
yes.
You kept to that, I think.
Yeah.
You can plot all the way through, and the songs don't jar. They're fully integrated in that sense.
Oh, that's very good news.
Well, that's my view.
Yes.
Now, forgive me. So I'm very interested in how you were saying that you were using unusual sounds to try and develop an atmosphere.
Yes, I was kind of... I was sort of fairly inspired by things like Left Field and Portishead and things like that. When I was reading the script, it felt like if it was a film, they would be very much, that would be the song that was playing on the credits sort of thing. So I kind of started listening to a lot of rather strange William Orbit-esque kind of music, which is not certainly not the genres that I've been used to working in. And once I had sort of a rough framework musically, it was more important to turn it to not have anything that you can discernibly say, that's a piano, or I love the violins, or that's great French hornet, or whatever it is. So it was kind of crucial to mix them and produce it in such a way that nothing was absolute. You wouldn't be able to stick a pin in whatever anything was. And like I said, 90%, I think nearly all of the percussion is made completely vocally, just by me making rather strange noises for days on end.
How did your family cope with that?
Luckily, my family didn't have to cope with it. My wife popped up to my studio once or twice and just said, "What in God's name are you doing?" But my family still live over in North London now, so they've been saved that experience this time round.
Now, you were talking about the speed. Are you good at speed, or would you prefer
in terms of writing fast?
Yes.
I like deadlines. That tends to be the way in which I work best. And it was a strange one this summer round because I was doing Wolf Boy in London, and I knew I had 3 weeks in which to get it written and get some CDs and sort of MP3s out to the cast so that they had the time to familiarise themselves with it before I got there. And so I was doing Wolf Boy for 5 days, and then over to Northern Ireland to do another new show, which I'd only just finished writing, and then straight from there to Edinburgh with about 3 days in the middle to fit in the rewrites that the producer and the director had asked for, ready for Edinburgh's Wolf Boy. So it has been sort of pillar to post racing, yes. But I think it's worked. It's worked to my benefit especially in terms of Wolf Boy. I think predominantly because the material itself is actually quite slow moving, and none of the songs suddenly race. There isn't a point where you can tap your foot at any given point in the show, and so as a result of that, having met the actors, got to grips with how they were playing the characters, and then had that opportunity in the middle to tweak things in their direction toward their favour and toward their strengths was actually a complete benefit. So it worked. It was just a very, very happy coincidence. So that's how it worked. But no, I like working quickly, but I think this is probably the fastest I've ever worked.
Never this quickly again.
Never this quickly again, no.
How many cuts? Well, I'm not going to ask you about cuts per se, but I mean,
sure.
In terms of tweaking and changes, is it a vastly different show? Would you?
From the show that opened on the very first preview of London to now, I'd say it is quite drastically different.
Oh, it is. Now.
In as much as there were sections of the play which seemed to me to be very obviously kind of musicalised moments and so on, and as you say, things like the kind of almost torture sequence, strange sequence at the beginning. There was a secondary one of those. All of the cuts that were made and all the tweaks that were made were completely and utterly character based. It was which is an unusual sort of privilege to have, I guess, in some ways, being able to look at an actor doing something and knowing that the reason that it doesn't work is because that's not there. That's simply not in the character. So I think there were 2 or 3 fairly major changes, and there was an entire song about the porn magazine which they read in the bedroom. There was an entire song about the Penthouse Forum which we got rid of because it just transpired to be a little bit off the corrupt key, and it looked like we were trying to sort of crowbar a foot tapping number into the middle of a show that really didn't need it.
It seems to me as though so often changes made are cuts and slices for that reason, but you're also talking about being given more illumination into the characters because the performers were giving you that.
Absolutely. The biggest song that is now in the Edinburgh version of it, I finished writing about 8 hours before I got on the plane to Edinburgh.
Ooh.
So that was kind of absolutely brand new, and it became very clear to us that there was sort of a fairly gaping hole in the third act of the show where we needed to find a proper resolution between the brothers. And also, if you are missing an opportunity to hear Lee and Greg sing, then you are missing a trick, something chronic. So as a result, we put a song together that I think really sorts their stories out, and it gives them a much cleaner through line. But that was poor Lee didn't receive it until I think I sent the MP3 through, and then I arrived in Edinburgh about 12 hours later to find them sitting around a table panicking, listening to it on a laptop, going, right, so we open tomorrow, Leon, and you've just given us the new song. But unfortunately, that was the way that it was always going to work, and I think it's the way that a lot of the best stuff does work. And obviously everybody knows in Edinburgh you are always under a time constraint of one sort or another, and that was ours.
I'm going to talk about the score a little bit further, if I may.
Yeah.
There's I think a masterpiece of a song, which is the one because it's intricate as well as being moving, which is the one where the two central protagonists, Bernie and David, finally sort of reveal their inner angst, if you like, or their feelings at the same time. It is a duet in the sense they're both singing.
Yes.
They're sort of singing separate
episodes
of it. But that is, at the end of it, you suddenly think, oh, that was... But it's one of those songs where you're dragged into it. It comes across, you absorb it because you're engaged with it. And then afterwards you think, oh, that was really very impressive.
Yes.
It's very strange.
Strangely enough, that's one, I think I know that you mean, which is when they're revealing their secrets and actually learning to trust each other for the first time.
Quite.
And it's, strangely enough, that whole section and storyline thread is one of the few things that's nothing to do with the original play. That's completely and utterly me sticking things in for the sake of trying to find the beats that I need to because obviously it's only an hour and 10 minutes long, which is strange. It's the first time I've ever written something that's just one act. So trying to find the beats that get you from A to B to C so that you can walk out feeling like you've seen a 2-act musical, but it's not sucked up 2.5 hours of your life.
It's a nexus point, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. So that's one of the few moments where I took my artistic license and put it in. I just thought it was kind of crucial, audience-wise, because it is the moment when you get completely on board. And the funny thing about the show, I think as a whole, is that you fall in and out of love with every single character in it several times throughout the show, and you're really not sure who to be on side with. And then obviously we do a 180 on the audience at the very end of the show, but I won't give the twist away over the podcast.
But it's I tell you what, it's tension building that at the end. I mean, there was a great deal of white knuckle riding in the audience.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that I always ask people straight after the show is David a wolf?
Yeah. Do you know?
Which is it's a 50-50 right down party lines so far.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because the people I asked said, so do we assume that was the question
Absolutely.
they asked me?
When I first met with Paul Holowati, who plays David, I said that in order not to lose momentum right out of the gate, and in order for it to work, he has to be a wolf. There's no possible way we can't think for 1 second, he might be a wolf or he might not be a wolf, because as soon as we do, then Greg's character Bernie just becomes the guy who's saying what we already think, and so luckily Paul in the audition answered that question correctly and went, oh yeah, he's definitely a wolf. So I was thrilled to bits, but no, it's not one that there's no grey area. It's either people seem to go one way or the other on that.
Oh, that's very interesting. Now, tell me, your cast is pretty startling. I think it's pretty.
They are
but they are great.
Yes, they are an astonishing bunch of people. I don't think I've never worked with any of them before. And Greg, as you know,
this is Greg Lowe.
Yeah, Greg Lowe. He was he was my post-assessor in New Boy.
Nice term, by the way. Yes.
Yes, and
just for our audience, you played that a few years ago.
That's right. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not allowed to make up my own words on this one.
Shakespeare did.
Yes, so he played Barry in New Boy a few years after I had, and so when I first met Greg, I said he gave a fantastic audition, and I asked him to come back the following day. But I have to say, there was a part of me which was, to a certain extent, messing with him. So I gave him an impossibly difficult brand new song and said, can you come back tomorrow and try the first few lines of this? And the song was very, very long, very difficult and very high. And he went away, learnt the whole thing cover to cover, blocked it himself in his head, came back the following day. And so yes, that was a head-spinning experience. But I did tell him after the audition, I said, well, you definitely need to come and play Bernie, but just for the record, I was determined not to give you this part. But no, that took no convincing at all. Paul, like I said, Paul Holowati, looks. The second he walked into the room, we just went, "My goodness, it is a wolf boy."
He is officially, what's it, lupine?
Yes, absolutely. And there's something incredibly seductive and very predatory about Paul. And to cap it all off, he's just a fantastic actor. So that one was very, very easy. Obviously, with Lee Latchford Evans, because of the CV and the past and the, as he would sometimes say, stigma that he comes with, so to speak, then which he was very, very keen to shake off. And he's been offered numerous things, and Joseph and goodness knows what else, all of which he's turned down. And Lee's done an incredibly smart thing by making the choices that he's made. I took some convincing, because I knew that he would be able to sing. I don't think we spanned as quickly on anyone as Lee, because watching him act was just incredible, and we were not expecting him. We expected him to be okay, but we certainly didn't expect him to be as startlingly good as he is. But no, he's cracking, and then him playing opposite Katie Beard is one of the most gorgeous marriages I've ever seen, because Katie's comic timing is flawless. And Lee's kind of quiet, sort of rather humble intensity is so they're a really eclectic bunch, but for some unknown reason we really got it right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But and Katie's brilliant, by the way.
She's superb.
You
yes.
were talking earlier about the imaginary corridors and the layout of the hospital.
That's right.
She does this very, what appears bizarre walk to leave the walls.
Absolutely.
But you quickly realise that she's following the floor pattern of this imaginary sanatorium, or wherever they are. The central characters, of course, Bernie and David. It's without going too far into it, it's a very homoerotic.
It is quite homoerotic, yes.
Exactly. I mean, and none the worse for that in some people's opinions.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're right. It certainly is, and it would be stupid to say that it wasn't. But I think,
it's more than more.
But I think that it comes out of. I think that comes out of a sort of a study in trust.
Yes.
And so from Greg's perspective, I always said that the story is kind of from start to finish a study in trust and trying to gain closure on parts of your past that are, upsetting or won't leave you alone. And from Paul, from the Wolf's perspective, it's kind of a study in seduction and friendship and loss.
Yes.
And absolutely, and power. But as I said to Russell when I first agreed to come on board, I said for me it has to be a love story from start to finish, and admittedly a very tragic one, but that I think that's where the homoerotic side of things, which is crucial to the plot and so on and so forth, but so that it's not coming out of nowhere to you.
It comes out of actually what's going on, rather than just being
it. Exactly. Yes.
Everything in it is legitimately there, based on other things which have taken you to that point.
Exactly.
In that sense, I think this takes us back to the narrative. The narrative has a very strong drive all the way through.
Yes, which is kind of rare, and I mean we owe an enormous amount of that obviously to Brad Fraser, who's structurally and plot-wise the play couldn't be more perfect, and there's certainly not an enormous amount of adaptation that we really had to do in order. We certainly didn't ever at any point go, we can improve this. We just found things that we could use to our strength to make it stand alone as a musical, because obviously I've certainly never heard of or seen anything like it.
No,
and I don't think there's anything else like it up here this year, which is kind of a nice feeling. And it's not everybody's cup of tea, and that's fine. And some people do find it a little bit too dark and a little bit too harrowing. But the fact that it does get very strong reactions from everyone, regardless of whether you love it or hate it, I think is that's credit.
Reactions, yeah.
Exactly, and that's credit to the cast and to Rusty and also to the producer Lawrence Taylor, who's done just an astonishing job sticking the team together that he has.
Looking back on it now, it's done and running, and it's been going a week or so here now in Edinburgh as we record this. What's your thoughts about your latest baby?
About the latest baby, it's. I think I'm incredibly proud of it. And I would love to see what would happen if we were to try to readapt it into a 2-hour show. I'm not entirely sure how we would even begin, because now that it is since London and the rewrites, now that it's on its feet here, it feels like it's in a very, very natural form. And there's nothing in it anymore which is jarring, and there's nothing in it that at any point we sort of go, oh, we should have changed that, or if we get a chance we'll change that. So I think for the purposes that we wanted it to serve in Edinburgh and the effect that we wanted it to have, I think it's just the right way. I think it's just the way that it needs to be for now. But I would love to see what happens if I ever get the opportunity to turn it into a full-blown show.
And after Edinburgh, does it have...
And Katie Beard has asked me to put in a tap dance number for her in the second act, so...
yeah. That won't jar in any way.
No, that won't jar at all, no.
Does it have feet? Is it going in with 4 feet? Or paws?
We certainly hope so. There have been rumours of it having a life after Edinburgh. But as yet, it's still really, really early days, and obviously we're just at the top of the second week. And as yet, we've not had I don't think we've actually had any sort of proper reviews of it come out yet. So we'll wait and see. I'd be interested to see what the reaction is critically. But I certainly think that it has. I certainly think it does have legs after Edinburgh, and we'll just have to wait and see whether it gets, brutally destroyed or not.
How can people see it? How long is it? It's on for the rest of the month here.
It's on for the rest of the month. It's at the George Square 4 Theatre, and it's at 5 o'clock every single day. It lasts just over an hour. It's not on Tuesdays, but the cast can be found on Tuesdays, wandering around, flying, and
or lying down.
Yes, indeed. And the boys can always be found running around and going to gyms at some ungodly hours of the morning. So.
And forgive me, does it have a website?
It does have a website, which I believe is www.wolfboy.info.
Well, Ian, I hope it gets all the stars it deserves, and I hope that you sell out every day. It's a great show. I certainly recommend people go and see it. So thank you so much for talking.
Thank you very much indeed. Cheers.
Musical Talk Twitter review.
And both Tim and I saw Wolf Boy. What did you think of it, Tim?
I liked the idea of the score very much. It was a lot of electronic type of stuff, or that was made out of samples. It was the story of two boys, one of whom claims to be a werewolf, and they're both in a sort of institution of slightly non-specific type, and they have this kind of developing relationship between the two of them, which becomes very sort of homoerotic basically by the end, and goes into a very dark place. So yeah, that was it. My review read basically: Wolf Boy, George Square 4, gay porn storyline, interesting electronic music.
And that's your Twitter review, isn't it?
That's my little tweet I made after I saw that one.
My view was that I thought the book was really strong. You didn't agree with that so much, but I really liked the book. I thought that was the narrative. And I wasn't that delighted by the music, although I enjoyed the technical approach of the fact that the songs did move straight from conversation into songs seamlessly.
Yes.
So I thought it was a great deal of craft. I just didn't enjoy the product.
It didn't feel really like a musical, which I think actually, in fairness, is kind of possibly what they would say too.
It's almost filmic in some sense. But
yeah, in some places.
Musical Talk.
I suddenly realised with the last two songs I've sung, you must think I'm some sort of manic depressive. I'm actually quite upbeat in real life. I tend to write these songs. Okay. I'm going to sing you a song now, which is again quite gloomy, but it's not supposed to be comic, but if you want to laugh, well, I don't know. Enough people have laughed at me, I think.
Hello, my name is Pippa Cleary.
And my name is Jake Brunger.
Right, and I should know who you are by now, if I may say. Right, Jake, Pippa. I looked at the wrong one of you, as I said each of your names there, just to keep you on your toes. The Great British Soap Opera, it's been running about a week now here in Edinburgh. How's it going, first of all?
Really good. It's because obviously we're doing 2 shows in Rep. It's only actually had 3 or 4
performances, yeah,
3 proper performances.
And actually 2 only proper performances, because one was a preview. So it's, even though we're here for the whole month, but we actually only have something like 11 shows whilst we're here. So it's quite bizarre.
But no, it's just right now it's kind of getting going, and it's starting to become exciting, and obviously the first week of the Fringe can always be stressful for everyone.
It's a slow time actually, and it's quite a slow year, and it's quite a bizarre feel around the festival compared to last year, where it was quite, as soon as the penny dropped on the first day, it was all go.
I agree with you absolutely.
Here it's much slower this year.
It's taken until about Monday, Tuesday this week even to get up to some kind of working pace. The weekend was really quite dead, I thought.
Yeah, now obviously we're on Wednesday, so it's just, I think it's going to pick up for the weekend again, but you never know what will happen early next week. Anyway, it's generally fine. But
have your audiences been coming in, filling?
Yeah, absolutely. We preview maybe 15 seats left out, but the 2-for-1 was full, and today was our first official sellout. So
good. You've had a sellout.
We are aiming to repeat last year.
Now tell me, even in this first week, have you had any tweaks to the plot, or not so much to the plot, but what tweaks have you made?
None.
Within the week. Yeah. Not many, but the week just before we came up, absolutely millions.
Yes,
well, not millions, so much actually.
No, we did a few. We did. We moved the
tweakings, but not half.
The most substantial was we moved a scene, just literally copy paste. Whack in a new place, a little link.
And we changed the end of a song.
We changed the end of a song. We changed the end of the whole show. We put in a new scene. We put in another little soap scene. Lots of.
That's the one in the laundrette, isn't it?
Yeah, which again we may change again.
Is that? My knickers have fallen on the floor.
Yeah. That's the one.
Yeah, it needs
My dirty knickers are all over the show.
Yeah.
Well, it made me laugh.
And we put in like little sections to songs and things like that, but we haven't had time to radically change. And we are trying to tweak whilst we're up here, but it's much more difficult because the change around on the shows is so quick and things like that. So you've got no time to try things. You can't reprogram the lighting desk. So any notes we've got to make, we're making, and then we'll implement them after Edinburgh.
Oh, I'll ask you about after Edinburgh in a minute, if I may. But some of the changes you have seen, I've seen since the rehearsal period. And for example, when they're filming their calendar, that's now set to music, isn't it? And I think it's like more effective.
It kind of was, but this is the song that we've kind of altered a little bit. It's only small changes. It's very similar to how it was,
Oh,
and
it feels like a different
song.
We've added a little.
As an audience.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. Well, that's what we want. That's what we want.
And that's also one that we really, it's still in the back of our minds as something
with,
we want to change.
Possibly in the future.
And we're even, we're still looking at adding another song.
Possibly cutting
in
one.
the middle. Possibly cutting one and rewriting it with another because it needs something. We won't say which.
No. Something for the memoir.
Yes.
So it's still, I still make notes and things like that, but there's just not the chance to put them in. And also, Luke, our director, is away working on another project this week, so without him here, it's difficult to put things. We can't put things in without him.
In a way, it's sort of set for Edinburgh, and then goes on further.
Cool.
It goes on further.
So we're very pleased with how it's working in Edinburgh, and to have had the preview beforehand is really really
rather than
useful.
making the mistakes in the preview here and then going, oh god,
struggling.
Yeah,
the preview is here was a case of helping set it.
The preview here was literally like, do the lights work at the right times? Are they,
more like a tech.
Yeah, because we arrived on Monday, tech till midnight, and then didn't get back in the space again till we had like a.
And then lighting rigs and instruments, music stands, all this kind of stuff takes away from the creative. Ooh, let's have a new idea.
Yeah, it's very hard to have creative ideas in Edinburgh. It's a difficult place. I'm trying to write at the moment for a new project.
But it's such a slog, isn't it? It's a good slog, but it is a slog here. People think that actors come in, do their show, go away again, but it's not. You're up on the mile, I guess.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean,
in fact, I've seen you on the mile.
Yeah, I mean, the day here is quite. We generally meet at 10, up on the mile by 11, flyering, appearances on other chat shows and things like that, general promotion, show at 3:45, and then the evenings we see shows obsessively. And also the best thing about George Square this year is it's changed from last year. Now
really
there's
good.
every night there's a cabaret in the bar, and it's absolutely amazing.
It gives you tasters of other shows
Exactly.
as well as being other material.
And the other shows do cabarets of songs not from their shows, so you can go there every night because it's always going to be different songs. And last night we had our cast did pop songs, and they're doing musical songs. You can do new songs if you want to. It's great, yeah. It's such a different change to last year.
Are you
much more
going to be
social.
doing anything on the cabaret?
We already have. I decided to take the stage.
And I read in for Linda Bellingham in the opening number of soap opera.
We like to get involved. We don't just stand behind the scenes.
But it would be great if we could write a song or something like that. But
something for next year, perhaps.
Well, it is something that we've already, as we said before, comedy songs and things. Once we have some time, it's definitely.
It's great to see other things as well. We saw brilliant Des O'Connor. Is that his name? The great London cabaret artist. So. Oh dear, we're being serenaded. That's Edinburgh for you.
Yes.
You literally can't.
It's called ambience.
We'll probably have someone come and flyer on our table, which we're guilty of. We do that too.
We do.
I completely lost my trail of thought.
Well, let me give you a new one then. First of all, what I want to know is how are the audience taking it? Have they been coming up to you and saying this is fantastic? Because I heard some very positive things when people were coming out as I was waiting for you.
When we flyer people, they say, "Oh, I saw it. I really loved it."
Give me a sticker.
Yeah.
Get out of my pub. Stickers are going down very well.
Generally the feedback's really good. We don't really. Again, we're so busy doing the Get Out. And
again,
things like that.
We're still at the beginning though. We haven't had that many shows. And,
no.
We haven't had any reviews yet. So it's still. But I think literally from today, it's all beginning to.
We had a lot of major press in today.
Yeah,
so
that was really good.
That will hit.
I consider myself minor press.
No.
Oh, you're too kind. Now, future? I ask tentatively.
Well,
because I hope everyone will come and see it in Edinburgh, but they may not be. Some people are foolish enough not to be in Edinburgh this summer.
Well, like all of our parents, so none of them will be able to make. It's just so far to come, for a weekend. But no, so we are, fingers crossed. Well, we are taking it into Jermyn Street Theatre.
Jermyn Street in London.
Yeah, again where we did Jet Set Go. Jean David Kirk, the artistic director, is a fan of our work and has always been there when we're kind of developing our things. So he's asked us to come back. So we are.
When?
I think
When will
it's...
it be?
I think it's between the 8th to the 19th of September.
But the website will tell us that.
And
It
the
will.
Yeah.
I will put the website link on the on the Musical Talk website, so any listener can go along and go straight to your website and book up feverishly all tickets in the German stream.
Fantastic.
And they can also, me and Pippa have a new website as well.
Oh, you have? Is it
We
ready?
do. It will be by the time we get to German Street.
Yes, brungerandcleary.co.uk.
Brunger, you've decided.
We
Brunger and Cleary.
have. That decision's been made.
And is that and or ampersand?
And
It's a proper and. Good.
Yes.
I salute you for the use of your proper and.
proper English. So that's quite exciting. So yeah, it's so weird because it's such a weird month up here. Like, you know, we're still only on the middle of the second week out of 4, and yet it kind of feels like we've been here forever. And it feels like we've got forever to go.
It's just getting on with it and doing it now, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think
it's
we're
really,
now
really
settling
enjoyable.
into a routine.
And this cast is just wonderful to work with. And they're constantly giving us feedback, aren't they? They're really professional, and it's really nice to be able to sort of
work with them.
Yeah, work with them, as
they're
we were
great.
saying before, creatively.
Well, you'll get a good reputation, I hope, because you've had 2 sets of professional casts now. And, you know, people will start saying, oh, you know, I want to work on a Brunger and Cleary show.
Well, who knows? Maybe there's lots of soap stars out there who can maybe play versions of themselves.
Yeah.
A bit close to home on that one, isn't it? Now, what else have you seen, just briefly, while you've been up here?
I think Six Ways is
Six
amazing.
Ways is very good.
Very, very
and
good.
Falsetto Land by the same company, Salador. That's the best thing we've seen, really.
Over the Threshold I enjoyed.
Yeah, Over the
That's
Threshold.
been getting stars hand over fist.
Yeah.
Of Plays, The Shape of Things by Neil
that's
LaBute.
amazing.
Absolutely brilliant. Best thing we've seen. Orphans by Dallas Kelly at the Traverse. Very good. Yeah.
I saw The Origin of Species, which is the Darwin thing down at the Pleasance, which
Too-
isn't really a musical, but it's a
Probably
life
too-
story with song.
Probably
Okay.
too intelligent for us.
Oh, no, by no means. It's a comedy, but it's pure Reithianism. It's very, very funny, but you're pumped full of information underneath. I also saw Wolf Boy, which has got a really dynamic plot. It's a really engaging narrative.
Okay.
It's quite dark.
I haven't seen that yet.
I've not seen it, no.
It's,
We do
yeah.
want to go. We have to do that on chat days because we finished too late. We clashed with it. And we saw The Falsetto, which was very good here. Very,
That's David Milnes, is it?
yeah, a very, very interesting idea and concept, and a really nice little hour. I'm just looking at the posters
And
now.
he dresses so well, if I may say. He's wearing a pink shirt and a silver suit the other day.
Yes,
I saw
I saw last night in the bar. And yeah, that's it. That's all we've seen here. We still want to see Honk and Gingers and
So much still
everything.
to do.
The
So
whole
much.
thing. First Lady Suite opens tonight.
It does,
which
in
is
George One.
Which is Take Note Theatre's next production in September.
Is it now?
At the Union Theatre, yeah. First professional production, I think, ever in England.
Is it?
Directed by Rania Jamali, who's a fantastic director.
Yeah, she's amazing.
I'll get on the blower to Luke then.
Yeah, that'll all be coming up, and they've got some very good names in the frame for that as well.
Jacob Pippa, thank you so much for talking to me again. It's always great to see you. Your show is fantastic. I'm going to see it again on Friday. And I just hope that everyone will come and get a chance to see it in Edinburgh and in London at the German Street.
That would be fantastic.
And I'll see you
Either
again.
or.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What do you mean either or? And!
No, come once, come twice.
Musical Talk Twitter review.
We saw the Great British Soap Opera, both of us together, and that one I gave a 5-star review to because actually, as you know, I kind of tend to prefer the stuff that's trying to be innovative, and there's no conceivable way in which you could describe this musical as being attempting to be innovative. But I have to concede that it really does well what it is trying to do, which is a very traditional musical comedy, unmistakably British, with a sort of laugh-a-minute script and actually some characters that while they're not the most profound ones you'll ever encounter, did manage to engage and win sympathy, which is kind of important, and I think is often overlooked in a lot of these musicals.
It's the perfect combination of a sense of emotion, a sense of empathy, and comedy.
Yeah.
In a highly slick and professional production.
The story is of a failing soap opera that has to bring on a brand new cast member to revivify exactly, and to pursue greater success. And that's pretty much it, really. That is the story, and the rest is sort of mere consequences, and the journeys the characters are all going from to sort of make them to go from the instability of their lives to growing up a little bit. It was directed by Luke Shepherd, and also had a score and a book by Jake Brunger and Pippa Cleary, which is a very engaging, I would have to say, Lopez and Marx style score. if you had to categorise it as anything, but in a sort of very British way. A few numbers that were sort of cabaret numbers, but actually which seemed to fit the context quite well. So that was a success.
A 5-star show. It's Musical Talk at the Edinburgh Fringe.
And you get a free glass of wine.
Forgive me, are you Charlie Kringus?
Yes, I am.
Forgive me, I'm Thos Ribbits. I'm from Musical Talk. I can't actually give you a hand at the moment. Would you mind giving me a 30-second blurb about Merrily We Roll Along, if you don't mind?
I
saw it yesterday.
Best.
It was fantastic.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'll ask you a few questions first of all. So, what's your name and who do you play and what you in?
I'm Matt Irwin. I'm in Merrily We Roll Along, which is a production by Durham University Light Opera Group. I play Charlie Kringus in the play.
And it's quite a significant role. You're one of the three who rule in that, essentially, aren't you?
Yes. There's Frank Shepherd, who's the lead, who's this famous composer. I'm his friend and lyricist, and then there's Sophie, who plays Mary Flynn, who's our mutual friend who's madly in love with Frank.
Now tell me, how are you finding it? Because it's, you've got a slightly abridged version. You're wrapping it up in about 1 hour and 20, aren't you?
Technically it's meant to be about an hour, but it overruns significantly. But yeah, it was a bit heart-rending cutting everything. But people seem to still be able to get what's going on, and it's still a lot of fun to do. So
now you get Franklin Shepherd Inc., which is one of the fast patter songs in it, in fact.
Yes.
And one of the really significant moments. How is that for you as a character? Or as an actor?
It's a lot of fun to do. It's fantastic amount of fun. You get to go completely crazy on stage, but no. It's as a character, it's a really significant moment. It's actually really sad and tragic, but it's fun just from a dramatic sense and just technical sense and everything. Really, it's just brilliant.
Now, if people want to see it, where can they see it, and for how long?
It's at C2, which is at the top of the Royal Mile, and you turn left at the fork.
It's C2TOO, isn't it?
C2TOO, yes.
Johnson Terrace.
Yes, and it's at 9:05 every night for an hour, just for an hour.
And when does it finish?
It finishes. It's all through August, so it finishes on 31st of August.
A real pleasure meeting you. Thank you.
Yeah, lovely.
Musical Talk Twitter review.
We saw Merrily We Roll Along at C2. That was, I put here, enjoyable revival of a classic, well acted by an actor muso cast, needs stronger voices, which I'm afraid is true. They had to, they weren't amplified in the space, but it was quite a small space, and none of the performers really had a belt at all, and that was a slight lack, particularly in things like Not a Day Goes By and Old Friends, all the standards that come from that show. So.
In fact, I'd just like to be a bit more honest on that one. For me, I actually really liked it. I think I liked it rather more than you, and I still find it very poignant, even though it was the modern version and quite abridged in some senses. But Beth, who's Frank, the central protagonist's first wife, and it's all the conceit is it's going backwards in time to find out how he becomes the corrupt, horrible old man he is.
Yeah.
The first time you come across Not a Day Goes By is at the divorce settlement, and it should be heartrending and painful, but it was actually sung slightly less. I didn't get that. I actually got the sweet first version, which turns up later.
I gather the cast are unusually young, even for a sort of Fringe cast, so I think I would have guessed in the sort of 18, 19, maybe 20 range. And I don't know, it's just very difficult.
It needs world experience.
If you're doing a sort of, the years go by. Of course, ironically, because of course the time runs backwards in the show, so you go gradually back to when they were in fact young at that age. Of course, it got more convincing as it went on because they were able to portray characters at that age and not so much of the middle-aged people.
However, for me, as I say, incredibly poignant, but I think that's more the work than the production. But I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it a very great deal, and I found I was humming the songs for a good day afterwards, which, bearing in mind I'm seeing 6 or 7 musicals a day, isn't a bad feat.
It's not bad.
But so, Mr. Sondheim, quite a promising new composer.
we will look forward to hearing more from him in the future, I'm sure.
Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
My name is Christopher Hamilton. I'm the writer of Over the Threshold, which is playing at George 2.
I'm going to start with a big question now. Over the Threshold has been getting... Well, there are more... It's the most celestial of shows here at the Fringe, it seems to be. There are stars coming at it from every direction. It's obviously a big hit. First of all, it must be very gratifying.
Absolutely. One never knows exactly how people are going to respond to one's work, and I mean, I wouldn't have come up here if I didn't think we had a good product, but still, it's very gratifying to have good reviews. And also the audience reactions, which is, I think, just as important.
Although one generates the other sometimes.
Yes, perhaps.
Tell us a little about it and how we got to this stage.
Okay. Well, I started working on this piece in about 2004, and I submitted it to a competition back in London, which was the very first Perfect Pitch festival. They were basically looking for specifically new musical theatre writing written by British people. So I submitted over the threshold. It was selected. It was actually the first one they ever selected.
Oh, really?
Yes, which I only found out quite recently, which is quite
You're
nice.
Such a trendsetter.
Yes, exactly. So that was the very first one. It was in North London, and my show was only on there for 2 days. Very nerve-wracking, the first time I'd ever sort of written anything in my life and put it out there, but I had a great cast. And there was very good feedback. I mean, I knew immediately that there were many flaws within the piece, which I had to address.
And was it your first show you'd written?
Yes, completely the first one. And also, it was I'd set myself a big challenge because I'd written the music, the lyrics, and the script, which I wouldn't necessarily advise people to do. It's nice to have somebody collaborating with you.
You have a triple threat.
Exactly. Well, I've tried to be. So I knew it did have flaws. So after that time, people sort of expressed interest in it, but I sort of put it in the top drawer. I didn't really want to look at it for a while, which was actually quite beneficial because by the time I did take it out again, I could look at it with a fresh eye and think, right, this is what needs to be done. So Andy Barnes, who is at the head of Perfect Pitch Productions, he always kept in touch with me and was trying to incentivize me to get on with it. And so, yes, finally, he called me again at the beginning of this year and said, had I considered bringing it to Edinburgh? And coincidentally, a very good friend of mine who lives in Edinburgh, she'd already said last year when I was up here visiting her, that I could stay with her. So the seeds had been sown. And I mean, Edinburgh was something I've never done before again, so a very, very first time.
Even as a visitor?
Do you know, I came here for 1 day only. I was actually performing on the QE2.
Oh, good Lord.
Yes, singing and playing the piano. And we docked here for 1 day, so I think I called about 6 shows, and we left at midnight. So
good man.
Exactly. I was, goggle-eyed by the end of it, but it was a great experience. So I always wanted to come. I'd heard so many wonderful things about it. So when Andy Barnes suggested coming up here, that really gave me the incentive to go back to it and just revisit the whole thing. And I completely rewrote the script, cut songs, added new songs. For instance, it never had an opening song before, which now I look back on and think, how on earth could we not have had an opening song for a musical? I think it's a totally different piece. And actually the people who saw it 3 years ago and now are watching it now, they are quite amazed. Thankfully, they say I've improved it for the better and not sort of taken away any good bits.
But so although you say it's totally new, it's actually still a development of the original. Presumably the original kernel of the idea.
Oh, absolutely. It has the same story. It has the same characters. But I think, because I wasn't a scriptwriter before, this was my very first time, so I was learning as I was doing it. And it's amazing when you go back and think, well, that line is extraneous. We don't need this. This needs something extra here. Just to sort of deepen the characters and make them a little more sympathetic, because in the original story, they were a little bit unsympathetic, to be honest. I think one person said, it's like Closer, the Patrick Marber play, set to music, which wasn't my intention.
Nice and acidic, then.
Yes, exactly. So I think they are now more relatable. I mean, people, I can see the hankies in the audience at the end. I won't give the story away, but, it does seem to move people, which is, well, I'm over the moon with that.
Now, that's quite interesting. Can I ask you, as a creator, then, bearing in mind they had a long period of just sort of sitting there not doing anything, is it easier, do you think, and you may not have had the comparative experience to say yes or no to this, but to have stopped thinking about something and then come back to it with a fresh eye and say, now I see a lot more clearly what needs to be done? Or do you think, as so many people do, they write a show and then develop it a bit further and they don't actually ever have a period away to come back to it?
I think it certainly worked best for me that way. Having said that, I wouldn't want you to think that I didn't touch it at all, because in those 3 years, the music was being performed everywhere. I was approached by Montclair State University, who'd found some of the songs on MySpace. And it was quite a bizarre thing, and they asked me if they could perform about 7 of the songs at one of their big reviews. Happily enough, I was over in New York at the same time doing my own cabaret show, so they got me to MD it. So that was a wonderful experience going there and seeing all these 19 and 20-year-olds, Americans, totally buying into the music, loving the music, and so that was quite inspiring. So
the enthusiasm comes automatically with the Americans somehow, doesn't it?
Well, that was it. I mean, I couldn't have had a better response if I'd been Andrew Lloyd Webber, to be honest with you. So, but it was good. It was very good for one's ego. And
Lord Christopher, I like it.
Yes. And then songs have been performed in cabaret at the What's on Stage Theatre Goers Choice Awards. one of the songs, Women Like You, which people tend to like, that was performed, and I think Diana Rigg afterwards asked, who wrote that song? I must find out. So I wasn't actually there to see it, but so the music was always being out there and, on the internet and performed. I always perform my songs.
So it never really went away, but it just became in stasis for a bit? Or
Exactly, but I think purely from the point of view of the script, it was absolutely essential for me to forget about it for a while and then come back to it with a totally different, perspective.
Now, what are the last few stages it's taken you to get to Edinburgh this year? Because you say, in a way, it came back to life at the beginning of the year with the phone call from Andy.
Exactly. Well, I can't believe how quickly it's all happened. I mean, basically, he called me just in the new year, and then it was a matter of me finalising it to my... until I was happy with the piece. Then we had to find a director, and we found John Brandt, who's the associate director for Perfect Pitch, and we hit it off immediately, shared the same vision. So he had his thoughts on the script, so again I went back to the drawing board. Then we had a read-through with some very good actors, they all gave input. So it was a very creative process, and I think as a writer you can't afford to be closed. And I like to think that I'm very able to take on board people's opinions. You have to stay true to what you want to sort of get across as well. You can't just take everybody's opinions. But so that was very worthwhile, and then we set about casting it.
And what time of the year was that taking place? Because I'm always fascinated by Edinburgh because theatre actually works very slowly and then very quickly.
Absolutely.
And it's real swings and roundabouts. But Edinburgh seems to do that even more so. It's half the speed of going to the West End.
Well, I've just been working on Nervous Energy, I think, for the past few months. Because
and Lucasade.
Well, exactly. We actually cast this, I think, early June. We held auditions. We had 3 days of auditions. And, of course, everybody knows the score with Edinburgh. We didn't have the budget. This is an extremely small budget production. I am paying the actors a small fee, not as much as I'd like.
Yeah. It's a stipend, isn't it?
Exactly. So I was actually amazed with the quality of people coming through the door. I mean, people with amazing West End pedigrees who wanted to be part of this. So again, it was very gratifying to be in that position.
And indeed, your cast have got CVs as long as there are in musical theatre.
Exactly. So that was fantastic. We put the offers out there. They were accepted. Then, of course, you have that horrible period of... they sign contracts, but of course, I used to be a lawyer as well, which is a totally different subject. But I know these contracts are not really worth the paper they're written on. The harsh reality is that if an actor were to get offered another job, maybe a year-long contract in We Will Rock You, then they will take it and they will let you down. So in the first week of our rehearsals, because our actors are so good, they were all of them going off, having auditions. So I was sort of sitting behind the piano with my fingers crossed thinking, please.
Who am I losing?
Exactly. But fortunately, we held on to them. It was only, I think, when we got on the train on the 3rd of August to come up to Edinburgh from London, I could finally breathe and think...
I've gone.
Exactly. Because, a lot of my colleagues now, they found that in the second week of rehearsals, actors would leave their productions. And I didn't bear thinking about it. I was ready for it to happen. But this is it's not an easy piece. It's 4 characters, it's 75 minutes long, and each one is an equally big part. So there's a lot of words, a lot of... The songs themselves are very wordy. So I think they found it quite a challenge, but they've certainly, risen to the challenge and come up with an amazing job.
Theatre itself is, I don't want to sound too much like a lovey myself to use that phrase, but it is like walking along a precipice sometimes. There are so many things that can happen.
Absolutely.
And I'm always amazed that more doesn't happen, actually.
Yes, I think with this as well. Looking back, the first week of rehearsals was a little stressful because I totally believed in this piece. I think you have to have that confidence. You wouldn't do it if you didn't. But the first week did take the form of something of a workshop because, of course, this wasn't a Little Night Music, which, countless cast recordings, people know it works. Obviously, it's fantastic. I saw it recently. This is a brand new piece by a brand new writer. So, of course, you get these experienced actors in the room and they do question things. And, they had the advantage that I was there, the luxury of having the writer in the room. So that kept me on my toes, certainly. It did mean that even in the 11th hour, there were huge changes I made to the script. I completely rewrote one of the songs because I thought it didn't actually fit anymore lyrically. It didn't... I'm a firm believer that the songs have to carry the story forward. They shouldn't just reflect, like opera did, on the mood. They should actually push the narrative.
So if the story has changed in any way, then you really do have to look at because the songs are the story as well.
Exactly, and I
wish more people would listen to that idea.
Well, I put my hands up. It was one of the songs, I won't tell you which one, but which I've always sung in cabaret. I knew people liked it. It worked as a song outside of the show. But then it was only when we actually looked at the new script I thought, hang on a minute, this does not work whatsoever. So that was stressful. But it talks about, going home under pressure and having to come up with a brand new lyric for 9 o'clock the next morning. But it's amazing what you can achieve when you do have that pressure.
Which leads me to another interesting question, I think, because there are genuinely two schools of thought on this. There are some people who say, right, write the show, obviously do some tweaking, but if you're rewriting songs at the 11th hour, certainly a lot of them, then perhaps your show wasn't right in the first place. And there are some people who say, no, you get the best results in the white heat of terror on the night before. Now, I'm sure it's actually a mixture of the two, but do you have any particular views?
Well, I believe in being extremely prepared, and I'm a perfectionist in all areas of my life, and I think especially with this, I didn't want to be one of those people who came up here half-cocked, not really know what I was doing, or the cast. And when I got a call from Joe Pike, the press officer, a couple of weeks ago saying, would you be prepared to let a reviewer in on the first night? Most people don't, quite frankly, because it was our first preview. Without any hesitation, I said, absolutely, because I knew that if you turn these reviewers away, they often don't come back.
Oh, absolutely.
So I stressed that to my cast. They were fully aware of the pressure they were under, and thank God we did, because that was our first 5-star review. So
one of many.
Well, fingers crossed.
But it's worth repeating. It really is, because it's so nice to see a success.
Exactly. So they were very prepared. You know, it's a very solid show now. I couldn't be more proud if I were their father. I mean, they've done such a good job. Seriously.
But nepotism doesn't come into this.
No, of course.
Just for our listeners then, without revealing any of the developments, a thumbnail sketch of the plot.
Okay.
You know, what will draw them in?
This is where it gets complicated, because I'm horrendous at explaining the plot. I mean, I always get tongue-tied. I'll do my best. It basically deals with a early 30-something couple, Kate and Tom, who are at something of a crux in their relationship. They've been together 10 years. He's an out-of-work actor. She used to be an actor. She left the business to now become an office manager. So there's a whole host of tensions between the two of them. It actually opens with them arguing. They've recently moved into a block of flats. And on a Friday night, Kate comes home from work, a little bit woozy. She's been to a leaving do of one of the secretaries. And I won't give the game away, but over that one night, many things happen which completely question their whole lives, and if they should be together, if they should get married. They discover they live next door to a rather philosophical neighbour, and so it does have its sort of fun elements. It's difficult to pinpoint. I mean, I wouldn't want to say it's a comedy. I wouldn't want to say it's a drama or a farce. But it has all sorts of elements in it.
Would you prefer to give me a tone? Would that be a better way of putting it? Oh, God. Or is that still too simplistic? Probably is.
I think it's difficult to pin down tonally because, you know, and this is another thing now, I mean, we didn't know until, you know, I'm the MD, the musical director, so I'm sitting behind the keyboard each night, so I can see the audience's reactions. And, you know, people are laughing at things which I wanted them to laugh at, but I think by the end of the show, it goes to a different emotional place. And I think one of the messages is that people can act quite rashly and recklessly, but then you have to deal with the consequences. So this isn't your typical boy meets girl love story, which I think we've had enough of, to be perfectly frank. I mean, I think why people are responding to it well is because it really does deal with the nitty-gritty of relationships, and specifically those early 30-something relationships where, you know, women perhaps are thinking, should I be married now? I've been with this guy for a long time. And of course, you know, my parents' generation, this would not have been an issue because people married a lot earlier. But now with career women, it's a totally different ballgame. So hopefully it is thought-provoking, and, you know...
Well, you say you've been seeing the audience then. Have you been getting different responses on different nights, or would you say it's relatively uniform? I'm fascinated, because people forget that the audience are as much part of a play or any show as the cast and crew and creators, in one sense, because you generate atmospheres, and a good one or a bad one can...
Absolutely. And we always have sort of post-show meetings with the cast, the director, John Brandt, and myself, and I think because people are laughing a lot in the beginning, there's always that danger for actors to sort of begin to expect the laugh, and then it sort of takes it a little bit into that realm of unrealism. So that's a danger one has to be conscious of. No, I think people are generally, thank God, they're reacting in the way I wanted them to. It would be awful if I was sitting there and they're sort of laughing at the serious bits, or, you know, sitting poker face during the lighter moments. So, no, they're pretty much behaving themselves, the audiences, which is fantastic. And it's such a small venue. I mean, George 2 holds 87 people. So you really feel as if you are in these people's living rooms.
It's a perfect, intimate venue. Yes.
Well, yes, I mean, I was offered a few of the venues, and, I mean, quite cannily, I chose the smallest one because I didn't want to have to use amplification. I didn't want a band. I just wanted me on the piano, these four incredible actors and singers who can, you know, you hear every word they sing, which I think, again, can be a little rare these days when you go to these shows and it's all so amplified you can't really understand what people are singing.
Well, sometimes it's so amplified you think, why am I just not listening to this on the CD?
Exactly. So this is very sort of unplugged. You see everything, you hear everything, and it's a perfect space. I mean, I love the fact that they build this theatre specifically each year. I mean, outside it looks like a little portaloo.
It's several containers, isn't it? Yes.
Exactly, but no, it's very good, and it is good. Of course, when you're starting out, when you don't have full houses, it still doesn't feel empty. Even 10 people can seem a decent sized audience, but we are selling out now, so I do urge people to book up 5:30 every day.
Now, you mentioned earlier on the Perfect Pitch is about British musicals.
Yes.
It's advertised as a British musical, as several others are up here now. There's a kind of resurgence of British musicals, i.e. British musicals which are not Andrew Lloyd Webber big showstoppers. I'm talking about what I consider to be the more traditional British, actually the lost art of the small, intimate British musical.
Yes.
Which I think was sort of swept out of the water with Lionel Barton, Oliver and things like that. And suddenly we got the big shows.
Yeah.
Lovely though they are. Do you see yourself as being in a British tradition? Do you see yourself as borrowing from the Americans? Where do you see yourself in the pantheon of musical theatre? If that's not a pretentious question, although it can't help but be one.
Yes, influences. Let me think. Well, I was actually classically trained, so I started playing the piano at the age of 4. So I remember vividly going to operas, quite pretentiously, I suppose, looking back, at the age of 10. I come from Wales, so we had the fabulous Welsh National Opera. So I would book season tickets and go by myself when all my friends were sort of doing whatever. I would go in. So I adore opera, I adore classical music. So that is such a huge part of my musical essence, if you like. Gosh, I'm slipping into the pretentiousness now, but it is.
Come in, the water's lovely.
Exactly. So that's definitely a huge influence on me. In fact, there's one big love duet in this show, No One in the World, which I think one of our actresses, Helen French, she did an interview and she said it's Puccini-esque.
Oh, right.
And actually I was thinking of it. So she picked up, and I didn't even have that conversation with her. I mean, I was thinking of Puccini when I wrote it. In terms of musical theatre, I must admit I adore Cole Porter. A huge fan, and also the fact that he wrote the music and the lyrics.
Indeed.
That's been a huge influence on me. Just incredibly clever lyrics and lush harmonies. Noel Coward.
Well, that's interesting, because both Cole Porter and Noel Coward I think of as lyricists. I mean, they do both, but I think of them as... It's unfair to say lyricists first, but their lyrics are so precise. I mean, Noel Coward's lyrics are like a metronome, and Cole Porter is such a witty lyricist. And, and you said earlier on that your songs are quite wordy. How are you? You're obviously you're good with words, he said, failing to find the word that describes that, rather letting himself down.
Right, well, I would never want to presume to say, I'm even in the same ballpark as both Noel Coward and Cole Porter, because they were just two standalone geniuses. But
they're a good thing to be aspirational towards.
Absolutely. Well, I love words. I always have. I mean, even when I was a kid, I remember writing limericks, and before I even thought about combining music and words. So I was always writing poetry, and just I get great sense of delight when I come up with a good rhyme or when things fit. But no, those two in particular have definitely influenced me. I adore the music of Stephen Schwartz.
Oh, how very interesting.
That's as well. Really like his... I mean, Wicked's one of my favourite shows at the moment, which people might be surprised to hear. I love...
You'll be in good company with our listenership.
Exactly. Well, love Stephen Sondheim. Again, I mean, an absolute genius and what a wordsmith. So I think, yes, many different... I mean, I like all sorts of music. I listen to pop music, I'll go and see any musical. I mean... I'm not such a musical theatre fan that I would go and see anything.
No.
I'm very discerning, and that was always the case. I mean, I think a lot of people in this business now, they're just absorbed with any musical theatre. I mean, I am quite discerning at things I want to see. But I remember when Rent came out, I saw that on Broadway, and I really loved that. I think that was back in 97, probably. So just a very wide smorgasbord of musical...
And from eras as well. So, I mean, you've crossed the channel in both directions.
Yes.
And you've tackled at least 70 years' worth of musical history.
Yes.
So that's quite, yes, as you say, smorgasbord, I think, is the word, actually. Sadly, not an English word, but there we go.
Yes.
How would you describe the music? I think sometimes it's easier to identify with lyricists, and you've picked a lot of good lyricists amongst your... I mean, you've picked composers as well, but...
I think, one I completely forgot, and I think people have picked up on, I love Cy Coleman's work. And what I love about Cy Coleman is that the general public don't really seem to be aware of him as a composer.
Yet He's not a name people think of.
No, they would be amazed if they heard the music he'd come up with. because, you know, a thing like Big Spender, and that's what, I mean, we all know these songs, but I mean, I love his harmonies. I mean, they're traditional, they're quite jazzy. I think there was a review of our show the other day, it said it's sort of nouveau jazz. It referred to, I love those lush harmonies, not just sort of guitar-based, you know, 4 chords. I mean, I really do go for the suspensions and everything.
Well, you've got an orchestra, use it.
Well, exactly. And in fact, a few of our cast said, I can hear your score, like, with the strings, and of course I hear it in my head. I mean, it'd probably be a bit overpowering for 4 characters. But
I look forward to the album Symphonic Hamilton.
Exactly. But no, I mean, so Cy Coleman, definitely, I think you know, it's so difficult to pinpoint what the music's like. I mean, I think people used to say when they first heard my music, they feel like they've heard it before, which right at the start used to slightly irritate me, because I thought, I'm not plagiarising anything here, I'm not copying anyone, I'm not even, you know, sitting down thinking I want to write in anybody's style. But then I met somebody who said to me, well, actually that's a very good compliment, because it is original, yet I don't know, people...
In the pantheon.
Exactly, people respond to it. So it doesn't irritate me anymore. I think it's actually a big compliment. You know, you want to sort of write songs which, I don't know, people can immediately grasp onto. I think within this show there's very different styles of music. At the end there's actually a quartet which I didn't think of, as I was writing it, but it's almost a little Mozartian. They're all singing at the same time, and it's, you know, very staccato chords underneath.
That's, I mean, forgive me, because you've mentioned the classical training, and also you've mentioned Puccini so far. So obviously, it's you are drawing in from a really broad range to make your own voice as well, I think.
Yes.
This is a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you have a particular a favourite song from the show? I always hate asking the question because it's like saying which is your favourite child. But
yeah, I know.
Sometimes people have illuminating answers.
I think in terms of promotion, we always seem to choose Women Like You, which is a duet between the 2 women, and they're not exactly getting on. Yes. I mean, they're really hurling abuse at each other, and it's a very jaunty melody, but if you listen to the words, it's very sort of insulting. So exactly. So people really like that song, and it's been performed at various on various stages. So I like that song, but I mean, I must admit, one I really like at the moment, which is probably my newest one. This was a song I added this year. It's called So Much More, and it's sung by the character Tom, and he's basically explaining just how much he realises he does love his girlfriend, but has just been unable to communicate it to her. So, yes, it's a very simple song. I don't think people would even necessarily remember it when they came out, but I'm quite proud of that one.
Now, that's very interesting. Why is it because it's simple and yet complex in what it's getting across? Or what is it that draws you to it yourself? Just because it's your latest? Or?
It might be that, because, I mean, you know, obviously some
Shiny.
I mean, some of these songs were written 5 years ago. Although, I mean, I haven't changed the music so much, but lyrically I have changed a lot of the lyrics. I think as anybody would, to make more sense with the story, or I just come up with a better lyric. This song is completely new, so it's not on YouTube, nobody's really heard it. So, yeah, I don't know, I think it's quite a touching song, I think. It's simple, but, yeah, effective, well, I hope, anyway.
And the other ridiculous question, but I do like to ask it, because everyone wants to know, is how do you actually create a song? Particularly if you're doing both.
Yes, well, there's a lovely quote. I think Lorenz Hart said, when asked what comes first, the lyrics or the music, and he said the paycheck. Yeah. I think it was him. Do you know what? I think sometimes you will think of a sentiment, so that will start the whole creative process. Then I don't even need to be at a piano. I can be anywhere, and I'll sing it into my phone. Yeah. Then a tune will come.
It must be unusual on the tube.
Yes, well, I do get some strange looks. But I think, and then it just sort of develops, and I can't say that anyone takes over. In fact, I've recently started a new writing project with an award-winning writer, Susanna Pierce.
Oh, yeah, I used to work with Rebecca Applin, is that right? Sue Pierce?
I think so, yeah, she studied in New York.
Sex in the Village?
Absolutely.
Yes. I saw that here last year.
Oh, you did?
In George too.
Well, I haven't seen that one. So basically, mutual friends put us together. They thought we'd be a very good writing collaboration team, and it was the first time ever that anyone's given me lyrics to write music to. So we had this initial meeting, and I said, this might not work whatsoever. So we were sitting in the same room. Again, I never thought I could do that with anybody. And Susanna came up with some lyrics, gave them to me. I went to the piano and literally in about 2 minutes played something.
Oh, really?
And she loved it. So I thought, oh, this is easier than I thought. So, and it's happened a couple of times, actually. So
you have liquid music in your veins.
Well, we obviously gel, which is very good. It doesn't always happen. But I think when I'm writing myself, it just continually, it's a very organic thing, and it's not set in stone. I mean,
how can it be?
I think the words do probably lead it, though, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, I find that quite fascinating as well. Also, the fact that you've done it together and alone. Also, I mean, you're doing many of the things that many people don't, so you're going to have the comparative answers to these. Now, I'm sure many people will be fascinated by Over the Threshold. How can they get to see it now and in the future?
Well, they can come along to George 2, which is in George Square, where all the musicals are on. The website for the musical is www.overthethreshold.co.uk.
And when does it finish? It's on every day until...
The 31st of August. We do have 2 nights off, which is...
You deserve them.
Oh, the actors definitely deserve them. Which is Monday the 17th and Monday the 24th. But then we have 2 additional matinees to compensate for those 2 lost performances on the 20th and 21st. So that's quite good for people who can't come in the evening. They are at 12:15 p.m. So, as I say, we are selling quite well. We're frequently appearing on the little stage on the high street, which is a great marketing tool because we had about 80 people just stop and I'm handing out flyers. This is all part of the fun with Edinburgh. As I said, it's my first time, so yeah, I'm just throwing myself into it and enjoying every minute. Yes.
Now, where does it go after this? Because obviously there's clearly huge interest. It's doing well. It's getting, as I say, star over star over star. How many 5-star reviews so far?
3.
And we're not even through the first week of the festival.
I know, it's well, we can only go down from here. The cynic in me is thinking, oh gosh, but hopefully not.
Surely there must hopefully be an opportunity for this to go somewhere else. Do you have any plans at the moment, or is it too early to say?
I think it's too early to say. I mean, obviously, it would be fantastic if this musical was picked up. I mean, I suppose the beauty of it is that it's very small. I mean, it's 4 characters. It doesn't require a huge budget. It's one set. And I think the commercial part of me, when I was starting this a few years ago, specifically wanted to do something small, so it would be easy to stage. I imagine in terms of London, the Trafalgar Studios would be a wonderful venue, the Chocolate Factory, these sort of small venues, but not too small.
Yes.
It's way too early to say. I mean, I think the danger is as well that it's to get your hopes up and then nothing happens, because it is so difficult, especially in this current climate where shows are closing all the time. Exactly. So if nothing happens with it in the immediate future, I certainly won't see that as some sort of failure. I think my learning experience has been that just how long it does take for these things to get to the first stage, but I don't regret for a second that sort of hiatus between 2006 and now, because I think it was actually necessary.
You can have a long gestation period, but still get an elephant out of it. So
well,
that's
hopefully.
A positive thing.
Yes, no, exactly. So it's the good thing with this show. I mean, it's a traditional musical theatre show. There's nothing gimmicky in it. There's nothing zeitgeisty about it. It's not that if it's not on now, it's not capitalising on some.
Yes. It's not Credit Crunch the musical or something like that.
Exactly.
Relies on a bit of topicality.
I mean, the subject matter is universal, and what I've loved is there's been children in the audience. There've been 80-year-olds in the audience, and there's something in it for all those people, which is good. So I think it's just a matter of seeing how it goes. And as I say, I mean, the audience response for me, I mean, it's lovely to have great reviews by critics, but at the end of the day, critics see so many shows and look at it with a very critical eye, but to be having the feedback from the audiences after each show is priceless, I think.
To see genuine engagement, then that's all. If one person walks away with having engaged and enjoyed, then
exactly.
I agree with that entirely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where next for you, Christopher Hamilton?
Where next for me? Well, as I say, I'm working on a new piece with Susanna Pearce called Melody Towers. So I think she's actually coming up in a couple of weeks. So we're going to start again with that. I'm also working on another project, which is a little bit secret at the moment because there's a rights issue attached to it. But I've started writing the songs for that. Totally different to this. Actually, really big.
Right.
Yes, it could be like a huge musical.
This is your Oliver.
Exactly. I continue to write. I'm doing shows in George 1, little cabaret shows in the bar, which songs I've written not from Over the Threshold, other songs, because I love to perform as well, which I think is important. People often say to me, what do you prefer, writing or performing? And for me, they're both two sides of the same coin. I mean, I couldn't do one without the other. I love to write new songs and perform them and perform other people's songs. So just performing anywhere that will have me, writing. Yeah, this is just a wonderful experience. I don't want it to end, basically.
Christopher, thank you so much for talking to me. I can only wish you the best of luck. I just don't think you're going to need it.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Twitter review.
We also saw I saw Over the Threshold, which was by Christopher Hamilton, who's fairly new to writing musicals, and again interviewed him a while ago. And the sort of tagline is, "Infidelity might drive a couple apart, but then so might monogamy!" I was not a great fan of it, I must be honest. I reviewed it as follows: generic retro cabaret songs slotted awkwardly into ludicrous slopey.
Do you want to say that again?
I reviewed it as follows: generic retro cabaret songs slotted awkwardly into a ludicrous soapy plot. However, I did add, and I think it's only fair to add, that the audience did seem to love it, because I was absolutely not the target audience for this, which, according to the director, is, the over 65 ladies.
Yes,
so
grey-haired for them.
Yeah. So I guess that's kind of a measure of that. It was very old-fashioned music. I felt, and unlike Have a Nice Life, which we've heard from Connor Mitchell, which uses kind of backdated pastiche, it didn't really justify its use of those things. It was just a contemporary story that had very retro songs, a little bit like Ed was a little bit later, although Ed's a lot better. So yeah, for me, I just couldn't really get involved with the characters. They were all a bit, and for example, there are two couples and they end up swapping beds basically, so that in order to make each other or in order to make her husband jealous, one woman decides to go out and find a bloke. She picks up a bloke and brings him home, and surprise, surprise, if it isn't the guy who's the husband of the woman next door that she's jealous of her husband having an affair with.
Who'd have thought it?
Well, except that, did the guy not notice when he went out on the pool that he was being taken back to his
own house?
Pretty much his own house, which is kind of a bit. Would he not be a bit concerned, like that he might get spotted? There was just a bit too much of that for me.
Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
My name is Michael Hall and I'm the director of One Touch of Venus.
And I'm Claire Kennard and I'm in the cast and I'm also the press contact for One Touch of Venus and co-producing,
yes,
apparently.
I like the apparently, it just adds to it. Now, One Touch of Venus is a musical with a history. It's not a fresh new musical, although it's an old one with a great pedigree, but isn't done enough. Why One Touch of Venus?
Why did we do it? Well,
yes.
I'm normally involved with another group down in Croydon called Coda. We put on something in a bigger theatre down there called the Ashcroft Theatre, which is this lovely 1960s building. Looking down the list of shows we can do, this one caught my eye. And I can remember seeing a review of another version of it done by the King's Head Theatre in about 2000 or 2001. And I thought, I remember that. Well, of course, Coda really couldn't put it on because, we need something that people have heard of that they'll come to see. So then Claire suggested, well, why don't you try putting it on at the Edinburgh Festival? And that suddenly struck me as an ideal idea, that people are much more willing to go and see something that they might not have heard of. But especially if there's someone that's got a big interest in theatre, then they might have either heard of the show or at least heard a couple of the songs from it, and certainly heard of some of the writers.
Has Kurt Weill been the draw, or is it something else?
It has for some people. For a lot of people, it's the fact that it's a very romantic show and a great piece of escapism. But also it's wickedly funny. It's that S.J. Perelman and Ogden Nash script, and those wonderfully intricate and clever lyrics as well. Hopefully it's the whole package. But Kurt Weill has been a big draw for some people in particular. Those that know about him think, oh gosh, this is hardly ever done.
And that's exactly it. Now you're in it. How is it from the singing point of view?
The music is lovely. I'd not heard pretty much any of the music before we started rehearsing, and I think that one of the things that certainly from the performer's point of view, is it's been really great learning all these new tunes and some things that actually, I mean, I've done jazz singing in the past, and I will definitely take some of those things away and hopefully give them a bigger audience in the future and add them to my repertoire.
Okay. I was going to say a cabaret number, one or two.
Absolutely, and there are some fantastic songs in there that just don't get played anywhere, and when you hear them, I think people sort of think, well, why? Because they're really great songs. I mean, the most famous number from the show is Speak Low, which is often done, but actually there are some...
I've heard Earthly Kids to it.
Yes, and there are some other great songs in there. Stranger Here Myself is a really good show-stopping number, and...
I'm so glad you said that, because that's the one I thought, why is this not sung? Why is it not sung more widely? And it's interestingly arrhythmic in certain places. It's... I mean, people say Kurt Weill, you think all modernist music to a degree, and yet he's really accessible at the same time, and yet he will throw you halfway through a song. Things unusually happen unusually.
It is an unusual song musically, and it's the form is quite unusual, and what he does with it is quite unusual. I think it's all very clever writing from a musical and from the lyrical point of view as well. It's very clever and very funny as well. So hopefully, when we're on the Royal Mile and other places showcasing our show, more people will listen to it and think actually that's something I'd quite like to come and see because it is quite interesting.
And you do get a chance to do it live on their little mini stage up in the Royal Mile?
Yes, we got a few times booked for that, haven't we?
Yes, we have towards the end of this week.
What are you going to be giving them?
Shall we say what we're giving them, or
I can't remember what we're giving them.
Oh, the enigma!
You'll have to come along and see us, and see us probably about 3:00 in the afternoon on a couple of days later this week. We'll be on the top stage, the furthest up the mile. So.
Now this is your first direction, is that right?
Yes, it is.
It's a pretty impressive debut, if I may say.
Oh, thank you very much. I think I've had quite a lot of experience being on the receiving end of what the director has to say a lot. And I've seen enough things to know, I think, what works and what doesn't. It's sometimes getting people to do what works and what doesn't. You need to be very organised, planning in advance what you're going to do, but you need that sense of thinking about where things are in the point of the story, what the characters are going to do, what they've done, what they have to do, what they're going to do next, and come up with that bit of inspiration and imagination.
How did you approach I mean, obviously you have a musical director, but how do you approach... There's a world of difference between directing a play and directing a musical, isn't there? Because you have to make the whole thing integrate seamlessly as far as one can. And maybe sometimes actors aren't always... I mean, they could all sing, but not every actor is happy singing or as happy singing as they might be in other circumstances. Did you find that a problem?
I don't think so. I think that I generally went with... with people that I've known have been experienced in that kind of thing. And so there's only really one complete crunching gear change. Otherwise, the song is kind of led in with a little bit of introduction with dialogue over the introduction as it comes in, and before they go into the song, that they feel so much in love or so happy or so surprised about finding themselves in New Jersey that they feel they have to sing.
Now that is a strange song, is it not?
I can't explain Kurt Weill and Ogden Nash's
Well, all I can think of is that because this was first done in 1943, which is the same year as Oklahoma was first done, it's remarkably similar to The Farmer and the Cowman, which we're rehearsing with the other group down in Croydon at the same time.
Oh.
And I just think he must have thought, well, Westerns, they must be in. There's something about the handwriting in the score isn't quite the same for this as the other numbers. I do get the feeling that it might have been shoved on to lift the energy at that particular point.
It's funny, actually, because the song that was resonant for me was the Dr. Cripping number, which is also a little bit curious. I appreciate it has a role in trying to uncover the barber as allegedly a murderer.
Yes.
But it reminded me musically of a song called The Saga of Jenny, which is...
Yes, I know it very well, in
which
fact.
is by Kurt Weill.
Yes.
Have you had that resonance? Is that a little bit? Something I keep thinking. Why does this remind me? Oh, that's what it is.
Well, it's a bit of a parable. It's an allegory about that he's. The Whitelaw Savoury is using to show how Venus and Rodney have seemingly done away with Gloria.
Well, the story of Dr. Crippin was that he had his wife, and then he met another woman, so he poisoned his wife and went off with the other woman. And hopefully, just in the choreography from the first 10 seconds of that song, we just prefigure that a bit. And we hope that as Whitelaw Savoury, the switch art collector, is trying to tell the story, he's trying to trap Rodney or Venus into making a mistake. So it's a little bit like Hamlet in
that sense.
in a particular way. Yes.
It's curious on that front, actually, because it's just musical story. But that's 1943, One Touch of Venus,
yes.
which, of course, is only 33 years after Dr. Crippen was hanged.
Yes.
Yes.
In 1955, there was a British musical called Bell, The Ballad of Dr. Crippen, and it closed down because one of the national newspapers said it was in awfully bad taste because Ethel Lennev was still alive and was tracked down to Canada. And so they were saying living memory, blah blah blah, but no one said it when Kurt Weill did it in 1943.
Well, it's possible that not a lot of people noticed it within the whole show. I mean, it's because it's not the whole musical about it.
No, that's true.
It's possible it kind of slipped under the radar, which is quite good, really.
So people will obviously want to. People in their right minds will very clearly want to see this great classic revived, and if they can do so here. When is it on? Where can they see it? How can they get hold of this?
It's on at Augustine's on George IV Bridge, round the corner from the Royal Mile. It's on from the 10th to the 23rd of August, not the 17th. We've got a day off, and it's on at 10 to 5 every day on those 2 weeks. And you can get your tickets from the Fringe box office or from the venue itself.
Do you have a website?
We do. It's www.onetouchofvenus.co.uk, and you can find all the details about the show and our Twitter page and our cast biographies and our director biography and our band and everybody else like that.
And that's why you're the press officer. But I'll put your website on our website so that we always do that. So there's links if anyone's interested in take it further than that. To be honest, thank you very much. It was a wonderful show.
Well, thank you.
Hugely enjoyable and deserves a great run.
Oh, thank you.
How would I describe it? I think I would describe that show as a neglected gem brought back to life, if you're looking for a quotation.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes,
and I'm happy to give you 5 stars as well.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much.
Really
I know, honestly, I fantastically enjoyed it. So
Brilliant. Thank you so
great.
much for coming
and
to
make
see
sure
us.
you thank my parents for having done the easels and the paintings.
Creative parents, you see, it all comes out. Your father gave me his badge as well, which is very generous of him. So thank you.
A 5-star show.
Well, there we have it. Nearly 2 hours worth of what's going on at the Edinburgh Fringe in 2009 already. And we've got another episode for you next week, trying to cram in all the interviews, all the sense of excitement and fun, and just to try to give you some insight into what happens in musical theatre and at the Edinburgh Fringe every year. I've been Thos Ribbits. You've also heard Tim Saward, and there'll be more from both of us next week. You'll also be hearing about shows such as Baby. You'll be hearing about Breakfast with Jacques Brel. You'll hear from great old shows like The Pirates of Penzance, brand new shows like Chat, and other neglected great musicals such as Snoopy. And that's just a tiny toe in the water of what we'll be giving you next week, which in itself is yet another toe in the water of what Edinburgh has to offer. Do go up there if you get a chance. It's on all August. And it also means you have 8 toes left to put in whatever water you choose. Speak to you again next week. Copyright Musical Talk 2009, except for music, where the copyright subsists with the creators. And now for some musical festival out-talks.
6 Ways I saw the following day. This is by students from LIPA, including Patrick Clark, who wrote the lyrics, and some other people who wrote the rest of it.
It's a musical podcast about musical theatre called Musical Talk.
Okay.
This really does what it says on the tin. 7 o'clock.
Right.
So you've sold another ticket.
Oh, that's good news.
So amenable, Thos.
Shall I ask you the question again?
Yeah. Can I do talk?
No, I'm going to talk about it.
You must both do the talk.
I was going to say, it's like there's 3 stages. That's where we were.
Okay, great. So ask the question again.
So tell me, it's lovely meeting you two. So tell me, Luke and Pippa?
Jake and Pippa.
Oh, God! Every year I get one of you wrong. It's your turn this year. I hate myself. I should know by now.
You're going to put that on the bloopers, aren't you?
I bloody well am. Well, hang on, it shows you what a fool I am. And have you found that that's been the case? Have you found that Kurt Weill is a draw? Is it? I might just give this a second. I love outtakes, don't you?
Because
danger high voltage just to stop people turning it off.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not, those two sockets power that voltage.
Really?
Oh, really?
Oh, God.
I feel I'm in the hub of the...
I know. So, I'll just go back on that again.
It's the... Yeah, well, the magic word is Kurt Weill, isn't it? Or
yes, Kurt Weill.
Two magic words, really, obviously. Just so you feel comfortable all the way through, I'm sure you will. Just sort of conversational style is what I like to go for.
Okay.
If you say anything you'd rather you hadn't said, then do please
you
say,
know.
can we not do that? And,
Okay.
I'm not going to let you be... I don't want you to be in a position where you've libelled everyone you've ever met.
Oh, okay, fine, right.
So, and we're also not here for... It's not a searing expose.
Right.
Unless you want to. Unless there is a skeleton you're desperate to wear.
Not that I can think of.
Yeah,
No.
good, splendid. Well, if you can do something in the next 15 minutes, it'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
My dirty knickers are all over the show.
Yeah.